Welcome everybody to Camcycle's 2022 AGM, where we'll be reporting on what we did in 2021. Great to have you all here again. I'm sorry that we're not together in person, sharing cake and catch-ups. We're still online, we're still being cautious, but let's hope things start to change this year. Here is our agenda for today. So our AGM is kicked off, it's opened, and we'll be going into our introduction. Looks like we've given ourselves quite a bit of time. I think we'll run ahead of schedule a bit here. So we'll talk about what we've done over the last year with Camcycle, and then we'll move on to the formal AGM business. So we'll have our approval of the minutes, chair's report, our treasurer's report. We must approve our accounts. We'll talk a little bit about what we have in store for this coming year. Then we're going to give ourselves a break because it is quite hard being on Zoom all the time, especially for us presenting. So we'll have a break, go and have a cup of tea, have a snack, and then we'll come back for our guest speaker, Adam Tranter. We'll have some time for questions with Adam, and then of course our Camcycle awards, which will be fantastic. And then there'll be also, while we're on the break, we'll open up voting so that you can vote for the trustees, and that will close by the end of the AGM. If you've got any problems accessing voting and so on, you can send an email to contact@camcycle.org.uk, and we'll be able to help you. So let's start with what we did in 2021. I think the cover image probably gives everybody a reasonably good idea of one of our highlights of 2021. Let's touch on that. So we opened the Chisholm Trail. Hooray! Just before Christmas. What a wonderful gift. We'll talk more about that later on. But what an amazing moment after 2 decades of campaigning to open the Chisholm Trail. We had been great success with getting people accessing consultations. There were so many consultations this year, and just for one of them we had over 2,000 click-throughs, which just shows the reach Camcycle has. We've helped other organisations like Milton Cycling Campaign with their campaigning. We've opened infrastructure like the Cyclops Junction, had successful petitions, lots of modal filters, and over 120 people became members of Camcycle. So we can't help it, we'll have more pictures of the Chisholm Trail, and I bet just about everybody attending this AGM has visited at least once. I seem to find myself there nearly every single day, but an absolute game changer for many journeys in Cambridge has been the Chisholm Trail, the Abbey Chesterton Bridge, and the underpass going underneath Newmarket Road. And of course, we can't talk about the Chisholm Trail without mentioning Jim Chisholm. And I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Jim for all of his work over the past 2 decades, and in particular the past few years, really making sure that the Chisholm Trail kept coming along, and also now helping to promote it, as well as helping us with some of the snagging, because we know that there's still some bits that need fixing, and hopefully phase 2 will be along a bit quicker than phase 1. But thank you, Jim, for all your amazing work. Everybody in Cambridge owes you a big one. Thank you. So our big campaign that we launched in 2021 was the Zero Carbon Streets campaign. And we launched this in time for Earth Day and for the Green Match Fund, through which we were able to raise quite a good amount. And we then ran the Zero Carbon Streets campaign again at the end of the year through the Big Give Christmas Challenge. And through these 2 campaigns, we've raised over £30,000 to contribute to the hiring of our infrastructure campaigner. So that recruitment is kicking off now, and hopefully in the coming weeks we'll appoint our infrastructure campaigner. But the purpose of this campaign is to really reach out to the region and enable local people to come up with the ideas for their streets. And we've seen so much of this happening over the last few years with the the trials for various modal filters to create quiet and safe streets in local areas. We've seen great work from Milton Cycling Campaign with their cycle parking project, which has led to over 200 cycle parking stands installed in Milton. We're helping more and more groups. We're seeing more and more groups popping up around the region, and we hope to see even more and to be able to support them. But it was really clear that for us to provide this important support that we needed a bit more resource to do it. And so that's why we're hiring our infrastructure campaigner. So thank you so much to everybody who's contributed to these campaigns to make this happen. And I think you'll notice quite a difference once our infrastructure campaigner joins us. Our other campaign theme is Cycling for All. And we've done a great job here. A good example was our election campaign, which we quadrupled the size of. We invited over 400 candidates to respond to our election campaign, and we had a very good rate of response, especially considering these were many areas that we had never targeted before for this survey. So it was really great to help get our message out to the region, to help residents beyond the city to find out what their local candidates thought about cycling. But also it was a great way of working with other campaigners around the region, campaign groups around the region, to generate those questions as well. So we've started a really good model there, and hopefully we can continue that for future election campaigns. Hopefully they're not all quite as big as the one we had this year. We've done a lot of work making sure that cycling is accessible for all ages and all abilities. We've seen some barriers still popping up that we've had to campaign against, and we've had to make sure that the funding from the government for active travel schemes actually comes through. And so we've done things like write to the Transport Minister, Chris Heaton-Harris, to ensure Cambridgeshire and Peterborough still got our funding, which was halted due to stalling on certain active travel schemes, which hopefully are picking back up now. And as I mentioned before, just a really incredible amount of responses to consultations. It's been almost overwhelming, the size and the complexity of the consultations we've had to deal with this year. So I just want to make a really, really special thank you to Anna, our Communications and Community Officer, who has gone above and beyond in her role. I mean, more than we would ever have asked her to do, to summarize these consultations and get really useful information out to our members so that they can respond. And the impact has been incredible. So Anna, I know you've worked very hard on this and you really have gone above and beyond. So thank you so much. And we've really seen how that work has impacted what's happening with these consultations. So thank you to Anna. I'm looking at Anna like she's next to me because that's where I've put her video. So Anna, I'm looking at you and I'm saying thank you. I know it's been a lot of pressure at times. Okay, so we've also had some great events as part of Cycling for All. Our events are a great way of reaching out to new people and inspiring new people to cycle. And despite the challenges of the pandemic, we've done a great job of having events this year. Of course, we didn't have our Reach ride, but we still managed to do a social ride during September under the Festival of Cycling. And it was just such an emotional and joyful moment, that ride, to see everybody again, members who have been here from day one, new members, even babies that we'd barely seen or never met because of the pandemic. So it was a really joyful social ride with great turnout. We had our Christmas lights ride, the first time we've done that. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Alan for being our Santa for the Christmas lights ride. I really enjoyed it. I hope we could do that ride again this year, where we'll bring some Christmas carols this time. And a huge turnout for our COP26 ride, where we took over Mill Road. I said we should ride like a bus and group up, but I think we were more like a train. There were that many of us cycling along Mill Road to the COP26 event. So really made a huge impact. We've also had some stall events where we've done a great job promoting the Chisholm Trail and our Save Our Cycles campaign, encouraging people to register their bikes and make sure they have good locks. We've also kept up a really amazing schedule of monthly meetings, and I'd like to make a big thank you to our admin officer, Rosie, because Rosie, you've done an incredible job of coordinating all these speakers. I've really noticed the difference with having Rosie on board and making sure these meetings are all organized well, our speakers are ready to go, looked after. And I think we've just done a great job of getting really interesting people speaking to our members. So Rosie, really good job organizing that. Thank you. Our campaign that we launched last year in response to the pandemic was the Spaces to Breathe campaign. And this started as a way to provide useful advice to people who weren't sure what they could do about cycling during the first lockdown, as well as making sure that cycling was an option for people during the lockdown, making sure that advice was clear, that people were allowed to cycle and they were told where and how they could do so safely. But it really became apparent that this was an amazing opportunity to show people what our roads could be like if we had less traffic, how safe and wonderful they could be for cycling, but also for improving community life. And then as we saw announcements coming from the government, it also became about the trial schemes and the reallocation of road space to create that space to breathe, space to move, space to travel in a safe and active way. And we've really seen that develop this year as these schemes have come forward. And we've had, I believe, 8 schemes with modal filters made permanent now through the Active Travel Fund from the Department for Transport. Sadly, the scheme for Mill Road was not made permanent. It was removed, but it's back on the table now and being consulted on in the coming weeks. So we've really seen this Spaces to Breathe campaign. I think it played a crucial role in bringing those schemes along, making sure they were quality designs and then following through to make them permanent. We're seeing slower progress on Tranche 2, so Spaces to Breathe must continue this year so that we see the next phase of schemes coming forward, because our local authorities are running out of time to take action with the funding that is on offer. Part of Cycling for All is also inclusive design and making sure that the infrastructure we do get is useful for people of all ages and abilities. And last year we had great success, 2020 we had great success getting the barriers to Addenbrooks removed within weeks of being installed. And so when we saw these barriers appear on the bridge over the A14, we thought, I can't believe we have to do this campaign again. Surely they've learned. But no, the barriers were there. And again, we were successful. The decision to remove them was made. However, they are still there. So great success in pushing the issue, but we need to follow through and make sure those barriers are removed. And then, of course, it seems these lessons aren't learnt because some barriers have appeared on the ramp for the bridge on the Chisholm Trail to connecting Abbey and Chesterton. So once again, we have to campaign against exclusionary barriers. But we've also seen some good success. We've had the Cyclops Junction. Cyclops Junction on Histon Road was installed. And as you can see from the picture, it really does enable all ages and all abilities cycling and wheeling. And that's the kind of infrastructure that we're seeing more and more of now. And I do believe in large part thanks to our campaigning. Then we still have puzzles like the Windsor Road cycling and walking cut through, which could have had some improvements, and it would have been great to see some improvements, but sadly what was proposed was certainly not an improvement for cycling and would have made it very, very difficult for people with cargo bikes, trailers and so on to use that path. And that path is key for many people for their journeys to the school, but also people travelling across Cambridge. So our campaign pointing out this Pants Junction proposal has been successful in halting those proposals, and we wait to see what happens next. But a huge thank you to all the people who have been working on these barrier campaigns. I know Bill was regularly going out and taking pictures and doing redesigns for the A14 barriers. So thank you for that work. We've had a really difficult year last year, and I know that the staff team in particular, and I'm sure our members have really felt the weight of the number of injuries and deaths that we had on our roads from people cycling and walking last year, really, in all the time I've worked for Camcycle, it never felt like that before. And very tragic was the death of very young Anna Garrett-Quinton, a physiotherapist who worked at Addenbrooke's. And there's such a strong feeling of grief from people who worked at Addenbrooke's and people who cycled in Cambridge that we felt it was time to take a stronger stance, and we installed a ghost bike, or a memorial bike for Anna, close to where she died on the Addenbrooke's roundabout. And this was really well received, for lack of a better way to explain it, from her family and from the Addenbrooke's community and the community at large, who felt that it was a very poignant reminder and memorial for Anna, but also highlighting the issues of the Addenbrooke's junction. So with that, we launched a Safe Junctions campaign, which we really need to grow this year, pointing out and being a lot stronger in our campaigning to make junctions safer. We ran a petition. We've collected a great number of contributions for which junctions our members and the community think need attention to be made safer. So we need to follow that through next year. And I hope we don't need to place any more of these bikes, but if we need to, we will. In more positive news, we're seeing changes to the highway code coming through in the coming weeks. I'll let Robin talk more about that one later, but we've got some rules here that are going to help make junctions safer once people get used to them, I imagine. And following on with my thank yous, I'd like to say thank you to Alan Ackroyd for his work preparing this bike that we put here in memory of Anna. This is another big campaign that really took off last year, was our Save Our Cycles campaign. And this is one of my pet campaigns. So and just this morning, so it's not on my slide, it's not in our annual report, but just this morning we had an announcement from the DFT, which I can now finally elaborate on a little bit without getting in trouble. But firstly, as part of our work to tackle the never-ending troublesome issue of cycle theft in Cambridge, Camcycle sits on a group of stakeholders from people of all kinds of organizations that we think could be helpful, bringing them together to tackle cycle theft. So we've got the Police and Crime Commissioner, the City Council, the County Council, Neighbourhood Watch, Cambridge University, Anglia Ruskin University, Greater Anglia, Cambridge Station staff from the North Station and the South, the Central Station, people from the CCTV Hub, business representatives, Cambridge Ahead. There are so many people involved in this group, and we really are making some progress on tackling cycle theft. We've seen a real change in policing. We're starting to see a lot of criminal behaviour orders. It takes time for the impact of these to be seen in, sounds harsh, but people going to jail or going to court and seeing the cumulative effect of the impact of the cycle theft that they engage in, because often it just seems like it's one bit here or there, but we're starting to see this cumulative effect that the courts are able to take more note of now. We're seeing dedicated police officers for the Market Ward in particular, reviewing reports of cycle theft. We're seeing better connection between the CCTV hub and the police. Amazing resource. I've been out to the CCTV hub and spoken to them and seen how they work, and they really know what's going on in Cambridge and really know where the thieves are and what they're up to. So we're seeing a lot of great work there, and the DFT announced today that there's £2.2 million being dedicated to cycling infrastructure improvements at train stations. So I can say some of that will be used to improve cycle security at Cambridge Station. More will be announced in the coming days, but there is some money, and Cambridge Station Cycle Point is going to be improved. And we've spent a lot of time over the last year working on what those improvements should be, and I hope it makes a difference. Camcycle's particular role in reducing cycle theft has been the Save Our Cycles campaign. So we've produced leaflets, posters, social media content, blog posts, press releases, to tell people how they can love their bike, they can lock it and log it, encouraging people to register their bike on Bike Register, take photos, make sure they have their frame number. Over 7,500 leaflets have gone out to students. We've had great coverage in the newspapers, in Cambridge City Council magazines, local leaflets from the council, Police and Crime Commissioners sharing things, the police are sharing things. Really great exposure from this campaign. And our video, my attempt at some content creation, showing people how to find their frame number. That is our most watched video on YouTube, with well over 2,000 views now. So we're definitely getting the message out there. And I hope this year we see an impact on rates of cycle theft. So we hinted with the Save Our Cycles campaign about our exposure in the media, and it's been incredible this year as well. So many people have contributed to getting Camcycle's message out to the public. Robin has written every week his article for Cambridge News, every single week consistently, Robin. So thank you, that's an amazing effort. Anna, usually Anna, but other people contribute as well, produces an article every month for the Cambridge Independent. I've been on the news, Robin's been on the news, Jim's been on the news, the regional news. So we're out there on TV talking about potholes, the busway, the Chisholm Trail, and so on. We've even made some exposure in national news. You can see here the Telegraph is commenting on our comments about the bikes in bus lanes, sorry, the electric vehicles in bus lanes. Even our new intern, Sarah, has made it into the paper talking about her cargo bike project. So thank you to everybody who's not just contributed the content, but also all of our copy editors who make sure that we look very professional when we're submitting things to the paper. Also for the media, we've had an amazing job with our magazine this year, another 4 brilliant magazines of incredible quality. So a huge thank you to Anna and Rosie for their work coordinating the magazine, pulling it together. A huge thank you to our copy editors who do a great job making sure that we look so professional and perfect with our magazine. Honestly, the quality of what we produce is incredible, and a huge amount of that goes to our copy editors and their very sharp eyes. And I'd like to also say a special thank you to Sue, our membership secretary, who has really done a huge amount of work. And I know I keep saying huge, but it has been huge. The magazine is always big, but Sue, really a huge amount of work managing the distribution of our magazines. And I know it's extra challenging during the pandemic because we can't have as many hands in the office. It's harder to get magazines to our volunteers. So a really big thank you to Sue for taking on so much to make sure our magazines keep going out. And of course, Sue, I'm onto it as well. We cannot forget our volunteers who distribute our magazines and keep them going out there. And we hear all the time about people who find out about Camcycle because they've picked up a magazine in a cafe or from a friend or something. So our magazine has a huge impact to our current members, future members, and also decision makers. So thank you everyone for making that happen. And of course, a little acknowledgement for Anna, who was nominated one of our 100 Women in Cycling this year. Right, we're nearly there. I can't believe how much there is to say about last year, but then considering how tired we all are, maybe that makes sense. I'd just like to say a big thank you to the people who have supported Camcycle in the last year. There are many ways you can support Camcycle. It's through volunteering, being a member, donating, writing articles and so on. But we must make a big thank you to some key people who contributed financially to Camcycle this year. Thank you to Cambridge Design Partnership for their amazing donation of £5,000 to support our work. And also to the co-op for choosing Camcycle for their local community fund last year. And we were chosen by co-op staff to be one of their charities for the year, through which we've raised over £6,000. So thank you, Cambridge Design Partnership, the co-op, as well as everybody else who has donated to us over the year. We've had an amazing job through the big give, as I mentioned earlier, £30,000, meaning we can hire our infrastructure campaigner. that was just a glimpse of what we achieved in the last year. Robin's going to tell us more in the chair's report, but if you don't believe there's more, I recommend having a look at our annual report, our annual review, which is online now, and that has all the updates, lots of great pictures for what we have done over the last year. We'll be getting print copies of that in the coming weeks as well. So if you'd like a print copy, please ask us. We'd love it if you took a copy and maybe handed it out to people at your workplace who might be interested in supporting Camcycle next year, for example. That would be great. And a lovely thank you again to Anna for producing a wonderful annual report this year. And I believe I am spot on time for the formal AGM business to begin. Oh, you think I may have done this before? I am going to hand over to Robin, and I'm going to have a nice drink. Robin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So first of all, for the minutes, we've had formal apologies come from Chris Laughlin. He was called in to have something done and cannot make the meeting because he is otherwise engaged. First up on the agenda is approval of the 2021 minutes. So thank you, first of all, Tim, for writing those. Those minutes are in the agenda pack. So does anybody have any comments on those minutes before we look for a raise of hands on that? And I'm looking at the chat to see if anybody is putting anything in the chat. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I'll give it another 30 seconds or so just in case somebody is typing slowly. So if you can look at your Zoom window, there is a raise hand button. If you would like to vote to approve those minutes, then please click your raise hand button, and then we can see if everybody is happy with that.
There are lots of hands, Robin.
There are lots and lots of hands going up.
We've got about 30 now.
Yes. So I think that has passed. So thank you very much, everybody. And so I will say that those have been approved. So next item on the agenda is the chair's report. So first of all, I would like to just say that I'm hugely proud of the staff. Roxanne leading the organisation through a very, very difficult year with lockdowns, and we don't know whether we can work from home or in the office, and if we do work from the office, how many people can be in the office at the same time. And the rest of the staff team, Anna, Rosie, also Sarah. It's been a hugely difficult year. I thought that given that 2020 was the year of lockdown, that 2021 we would have got used to it, but for some reason it just felt like 2021 was worse. I don't know if it was because of homeschooling or various other things, or the lack of social connections that we have from working from home. It just felt like this year was harder than last year. But given that, we still created some fantastic magazines, we kept the monthly meetings going, we've had some fantastic campaigns, we've raised huge amounts of funds. We've got Sarah doing the Cargo Bright project come on board, and you know, even that was difficult saying hello because, you know, we can't say hello in the office, so we've got to sit outside. And yeah, it was just I'm hugely proud of the staff and what they've done. And if we were at a face-to-face meeting, I would have encouraged everybody to give them a standing ovation at this point. So please consider that that has happened. And also this year we've moved into a bigger office. When I say moved into a bigger office, I mean We now have a bigger office, but the desks are still distributed around various houses in Cambridge, as are computers and monitors and everything else. So yes, we have a bigger office, but hopefully at some point this year, we will actually be able to move back into that office in a more permanent way. So obviously it's been mentioned the odd time, but the Chisholm Trail Phase 1 opening is a huge deal. And we have to thank Jim for his fearless campaigning. Writing an article in 1998, which is what many years ago now, and then having that branded at that point being the Chisholm Trail, and that stuck all the way through to the opening. I would still like the bridge to be called something a little bit more snappy than the Abbey Chesterton Bridge, something like Mr. Trail Bridge or the Jim Chisholm Bridge or something like that. But that's another campaign. Histon Road has been transformed. Not all of the things that have gone into Histon Road have been excellent. The new junction is fantastic from an exemplar point of view. Some of the bits are a little bit narrow and a little bit compromised, but in terms of comparison with what it was before it was improved to after, it is certainly nicer to cycle down there now. I haven't a clue what it's like in rush hour yet, because I haven't actually cycled down there at rush hour. But Histon Road opening is another great achievement, and it's in my opinion, a huge achievement for getting that done. Has to go to Matt Danish, who did an awful lot of the background campaigning on that. So kudos to him. The Tranche 1 schemes, I just want to point out 3 of them. Nightingale Avenue should have always been closed through car traffic. And now that is permanently closed. That has transformed the way that I can get from Addenbrooke's over to the east side of the city. Luard Road, hugely influential campaign run by people on the street saying, we really want this to be closed. The original proposal was to open it back up again to car traffic, and we fought that, did a huge campaign, and we've got to take that example and express it elsewhere. And Storey's Way, people on Storey's Way have been campaigning for Storey's Way to be closed to through car traffic for many years, and it took a pandemic to actually show that it could be done and then keep it. This isn't going, we're not going to have a pandemic every year, hopefully, moving forward, but we still need to be able to show that roads can be closed to through traffic, and strategically the traffic doesn't get worse. In many examples throughout the UK now, we've got plenty of cases where you've closed roads in neighbourhoods through traffic, and the surrounding streets have had less traffic on them because of it, because people aren't driving triply short distances. So those examples we have to start collecting and using. The safer junctions is still going to be my highest priority moving forward. Obviously, we've already mentioned Anna and the Addenbrooke's roundabout, but the roundabout at Addenbrooke's, we complained about it when they proposed making it worse for cycling 3 years ago, and it has not got any better. It has to be radically adjusted. We've got examples now, like the Histon Road Cyclops Junction, that shows that it is possible to build safe cycle infrastructure and allow plenty of cars to go through without much of a problem. Milton Road is going to be starting this year, and again, there's a huge amount of praise should go towards Matt Danish on putting together a campaign, working with the Milton Road Residents Association and other residents associations in the area to really put forward a vision that changed the way that the Greater Cambridge Partnership looked at how to both consult but also implement the Milton Road scheme. So that Milton Road scheme should start this year, and there's a couple of major junctions on there that hopefully will become a lot easier to cycle through. In the future, we've got Newmarket Road that has just finished consultation, and as part of that, we put forward, and have been doing this throughout the whole year, consultation responses or suggestive responses for consultations. This has proven to be an exceptionally good way of getting our voice back to the people who are making the decisions, both the officers and the members. So we will be continuing doing that. It's a lot of hard work to get those suggested responses written up and approved internally. But once we've done it, we get hundreds and thousands of responses to those consultations, and really butts forward our voice. As part of that, there's been a significant shift within county council policy around junctions. So if you ask somebody what you could do with a junction, 5 or even 10 years ago, they would say, well, we can't do much because the volume of capacity can't be reduced for cars. This is why the Catholic Church junction, for example, is such a compromised solution, because they couldn't reduce the capacity for moving cars through that junction. Now the county council policy is pointing towards counting people, not cars. So we will be looking at referencing that every single time that we come forward with saying we need this junction fixed. And apart from Addenbrooke's junction, there's plenty of other junctions in Cambridge which we know people dislike cycling through, like the Trumpington Road double roundabouts is one of my unfavourites. So there are plenty of junctions out there. If we can increase the number of people moving through the junction, and as a side effect reduce the number of cars driving through, then that hopefully can make those junctions safer for everybody. There's also been some interesting action at the national government level. I'm not going to talk much about gear change because we haven't seen much happen with that so far. But the highway code should be being approved by the end of this month in Parliament, and that has a whole scheme of things that are, or a whole set of differences to the highway code that are really advantageous to people walking and cycling. From the start, there's the hierarchy of users, which says that people walking are the most vulnerable people, and they need to be looked after by everybody else. People cycling should look after people walking and should be looked after by everybody else, going all the way down to heavy goods vehicles. So what that means is that it's not presumed liability like you might have in the Netherlands or Denmark or something like that, but it's on the road towards that. As part of that, priority at side roads, which used to be a rather weakly written, if somebody's crossing in the junction at the moment, try not to kill them, paraphrasing what the old highway code used to say. Now it says if somebody is crossing or about to cross a side road, then you have to give way, whether you're turning in or out of that junction. And that applies not only to people walking, but also people cycling on a cycle lane at the side of the road. Other interesting things have gone into the highway code. So side-by-side riding, for example, it's explained that if people are riding side by side, it means that the whole peloton, to use a sporting term, is shorter and therefore it's easier to overtake. The Dutch reach for opening car doors, for example, so you reach with your left hand to get out of the car on the right hand side, forcing you to turn around and therefore out of the corner of eye see somebody walking or cycling past. And there's also some recommended passing distances. A lot of these things aren't backed by laws at this point, but it is in the highway code, so they can be used as evidence that somebody wasn't, for example, driving with due care and attention. Other big news, Active Travel England now has a head. Chris Boardman will be starting in the summer, and that will basically be able to apply LTM 120 to those, to pretty much every single local transport scheme that comes out. We are hiring for the infrastructure campaigner. That recruitment is currently active. The CIO that we raised last year, that is still progressing. We're still determining what changes need to be done to the Constitution to align with the current Charity Commission's current suggested constitutions. And fundamentally, the only major change there is a suggestion to have term limits for key posts. So if you have a charity, for example, it's recommended for a CIO that a chair would not be a chair for life. They would have a certain limit. So we haven't actually determined if we want that or not yet, or what that limit would be, but it is probably the only other detail on that we need to do. And apart from that, there's one other thing. I know I'm running a little over time here, but there's one other thing I think which is important. We've had a long discussion within the trustee group around how to encourage more people to become trustees. And one of the things that we've discovered is that we've got a huge barrier to people becoming a trustee. First of all, they have to be elected, and there's some fear of, you know, what if I'm not elected? What if people reject me before I even become a trustee? And then there's also the, well, what does it mean to be a trustee? What liabilities do I have? Now, part of that is going to be resolved by becoming a CIO, and basically then, because you're a limited organization, and that's probably not the right words, but the trustees are not as liable as they are today. But the election of a trustee, there is something that we can do to help that. So what we're proposing is that instead of having people who want to come and join the trustee pool for the first year become elected, we would co-opt those trustees any time during the year when somebody comes forward and says, I'd like to be a trustee. And then only when they get renewed would they have to be elected. So we're actively looking for people to become trustees. If you would like to become a trustee, please contact myself or Roxanne or any of the other trustees. Put your name forward, especially if you're from a group which you think we don't currently represent very well. We certainly would actively look for people from a much wider community than we currently perhaps have trustees for. And with that, I'm going to be quiet. Given the time, I'm going to suggest that we go straight into the accounts and Peter, and then take questions for both myself and Peter right at the end.
Thanks very much, Robin. So I'm Peter Gotham. I was elected Treasurer this time last year and replaced Chris, who'd been Treasurer for quite a few years and had done a heck of a lot in improving our systems. The accounts that you have that are being circulated are for the year to September 21 and include as comparative figures for September 2020. But for the purposes of this slide, and indeed in the notes in the annual review, I've also referred to 2019 because, as we all know, the last couple of years have been pretty strange with respect to the effects of COVID and all the lockdowns and such. So 2019 is perhaps a better comparator. Very reassuringly, our income has held up, albeit from slightly different sources. Last year we had 10,000 of COVID grants, so actually we've done very well this year to replace that with, shall we say, real funding that's designed for us from our supporters, whether corporate, charities, the council, or increasingly importantly, our members. So our income has held up. Our spending has gone up, and that's largely as our staffing has strengthened. And indeed, as is referred to in the annual review, we're in the process of recruiting an infrastructure campaign support officer. Rose's hours have gone up, and so our staffing costs in the year to September 2022 will continue to go up. We planned for that partly, as Roxanne said, by forward funding. And as you can see in the bottom of this slide, at the end of September 2021, we had increased our restricted reserves to 41,000 and an odd. Most of that was for staff costs. There was a couple of thousand for a cycling project. But we do need to continue raising money to support the increased infrastructure that the work that everyone who's in this meeting has been doing to raise the profile of Camcycle and indeed assist in the campaigns we've been running and support work we've been doing. So, albeit it looks as though the general reserves have gone down, and indeed they have, if you were to add the restricted reserves to the general reserves, then our total reserves have gone up a little bit, but not sufficient to be able to be confident that we'll be able to continue to employ the infrastructure campaigner after the first year which we have committed to funding. So we're effectively investing for the future, both in terms of our campaigning and in our ability to get funds from supporters. The pages 32 to 35 in the annual review give more information on the details in the accounts, and indeed the actual accounts have been circulated for those who prefer to consider the information in that form. So if we go to the next slide, as has been said before, we are very indebted to the volunteers who've helped us, particularly Sue and David, for managing the amazing Cameo membership and donation system. And I must say, as a new boy to Camcycle, I've been amazed at both the extent and reach of the information that is in that system, how easy it is to use, and how much work Sue and David do in managing both our ability as users to get information from the system and indeed to support the zero accounting system in giving us useful management information throughout the year. Part of the benefit of the thanks for that, of course, is due to Chris for the work that he's done over the years in building such an effective accounting system. That said, detailed accounting work does take a lot of time, and so we decided to engage a bookkeeping firm to support us in that and to help free the staff and indeed the trustees up to have a more strategic view of the finances than we can have when we're spending a lot of time dealing with the underlying transactions. So that firm has started work just this week and are liaising with me, with Sue, and with Roxanne and Rosie in the office to work out how best to pick up the systems. The work that Chris did over the years in both developing systems and indeed in documenting them has made that a much easier job than they expected, and they're very grateful for that, as indeed are we all. Robin talked in significant detail about the plan to convert to being a charitable incorporated organisation. So I think I'll leave that there, except to say that it's something that, again, we consider be a useful move and perhaps even a necessary move in making us a more sustainable organisation in the medium and long term. So as Robin was saying, we're now open to questions on his report and indeed on mine.
Okay, just to remind people, if you have questions, please place them into the chat, and then we will read those out. Alternatively, if you'd like to put your hand up and to ask a question verbally, then we can also give you speaking rights at that point.
While we wait for the questions to come through, Robin, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Peter for joining us this year and for putting in so much work. I know it can just be overwhelming to come into a new organization and find out how everything works, and it's been a real pleasure to get to know you, and thank you for everything you've done over the last year, and I think we're going to do very well this year, now that we've got the ball rolling. So thank you, Peter, for joining us.
Thanks very much, Roxanne, and thanks for your patience. One of the difficulties has been picking it up during COVID, and therefore trying to understand things remotely rather than being able to sit side by side and work things through. But thanks very much to the team for their patience and support.
Gabriel, I would like to know, does Camcycle have enough incoming revenue to support the additional infrastructure officer, or does Camcycle envisage new ways of funding to support this role in the future?
Okay, so we have enough funding for at least 12 months at this point. That mainly comes out of the Big Give campaigns that we did. The longer term goal is that infrastructure campaigner would increase the scope of the work that we do, and therefore the membership dues that we can raise as more people from a wider geographic area or a more locally focused area understand what we do and what we can provide, and therefore become members. But also it gives us the capability then to go out to corporate donors or larger donors and say, look, this is the work we're doing, this is how we're doing it, and that we can raise more money that way. If you look at how money or the amount of income which we've received over the last number of years has increased, I'm fairly confident that we can continue increasing that amount of fundraising in the near term.
Can I add to that one other aspect to our work is in promoting safer cycling and infrastructure in the wider region, and there are groups around the region to whom we've been providing some support, and indeed you'll notice in the accounts that Milton Cycling Campaign managed to raise about £15,000, but not being a registered organisation, the money was channeled through us. So one other aspect is whether, if this sort of work continues, whether those local groups, or indeed people who wish to support those local groups, would also contribute to the technical support that the infrastructure campaign support officer hopefully can provide. So we have a wide range of potential areas where we can increase our influence and indeed increase the support to local organisations who have shared objectives.
Okay, so we've got another question, which is, what plans or ideas are there for increasing membership? So I'll pass that one to Roxanne.
Well, that follows on from what was said earlier about expanding through the region. We find membership always goes up in an area when there's a hot topic. So when the bus gate on Mill Road was taken out, within a few days we had 10 new members in the Mill Road area. When the Milton Road campaign was really heating up, we got numerous new members in the Milton Road area. So as we expand out and we start getting exposure across more areas, being more active, we'll become people will become aware of us and motivated to join. So that's the main goal for increasing membership, is through people hearing about the impact of our work and joining. It's not our number one goal for increasing income. There are memberships going well. We increase 100 or so every year. We'll keep that steady. We're not about to do a big drive yet, but the biggest is just doing more of what we do will get us more members. Yes.
Anna?
Yes, I just wanted to add that another really key driver for membership is when we do our local cycling news leaflets. So, for example, this year we did them in Mill Road and North Cambridge. Last year we did in Abbey area and some other areas as well, Milton, and we would really love to expand that work, but we really need volunteers to help us write them, to help distribute the leaflets, and then to help deliver just in sort of 1 or 2 streets near you. So yeah, extra help with volunteers. The volunteers of those projects is really appreciated, because that definitely drives membership as well. Just because some people, you know, are not aware of us, and you know, sharing news, for example, on the Chisholm Trail around Abbey and Chesterton, people, I've spoken to people on the trail, they sort of didn't realise where this came from, they hadn't heard of Jim before, and they really are grateful for what we do when they realise that it's related to us. So yes, please get in touch if you can help with that.
Okay, and then there's another question of, can you say who have been our corporate sponsors and what sort of companies? So Roxanne already mentioned Cambridge Design Partnership. They donated lots of money, which we're very happy about. The co-op have consistently run fundraisers, and effectively they are asking the people who go shopping to say, you know, do you support Camcycle? And if you do, please, you know, put the little token in the little box. And we get a proportion of the money that they make in the area. But we've also had other corporate sponsors over the years. ARM has given fairly sizable sums of money. I think Microsoft Research have as well. So there's we need to be we need to have the time to consistently talk to these people, and also the resources to be able to provide services to them so that they feel like they're getting something back. We don't have the time and resources today, so my hope is that the infrastructure campaigner can help a little bit with that, either by doing some of it or freeing up Roxanne's time to do some of that. So, you know, there is, I think, scope for increasing corporate sponsorship in the area. I think at the moment it's much more difficult because you can't have those face-to-face meetings, and you can't really, you know, go out to a company and talk to the HR department or the corporate giving department easily at this point in time. You know, I think there is more scope for that. You know, and I must mention also that the adverts that we do in the magazine, they effectively raise money as well. And we were very conscious when we moved to calling it a magazine and doing it in colour, that we weren't going to have that thing full of adverts, and they should be very subtle and very focused, and from people who support our objectives. And I think we've got the balance right there. Again, that is another way of doing fundraising. And what about cycle shops as corporate sponsors? I would love to have cycle shops to be corporate sponsors. I think the retail environment at this point is a little bit more difficult than we would hope for. It might be a little bit of a push, but we do work closely with a lot of the cycle shops, especially around the Save Our Cycles campaign. Every single cycle shop wanted to have that in the front window and give them out with new bikes and stuff like that. So the cycle shops can provide an avenue to talk about Camcycle.
I can just interject a couple of things. One of the things I'm embarrassed about is that I omitted to thank Brian Corbett for his very patient examination of our accounts and fitting them around our tight timetables. Brian also helped or examined our accounts last year, and and gave us a clean bill of health, which is very reassuring to see. He asked some quite probing questions. And with respect to cycle shops, of course, the discount they give to Camcycle members can't but help increase the value that people see in their membership, and is, I suppose, in a sense, a little bit of support for us.
There's a few more questions. Bev has asked, what is conduit funding? I'll answer that. It's a quick answer. Bev, it's where we hold funds in our account for another organisation's purposes. So Milton Cycling Campaign put together a program to install cycle parking, but because they don't have their own bank account, they're not a registered charity, we've been their partner in that grant. We hold the money for them. We do due diligence, but it's their project, and we just pay the money as required. So we can do that for more organisations. Tom has also asked, much of the coverage for the highway code changes has been negative for cyclists. Any thoughts on Camcycle putting a more balanced view out there? I might put that to Anna as our comms officer.
Yes, well, we have one of our volunteers is writing something for us on the highway code at the moment for our magazine, and we hope to put that out as a blog post as well, and we can definitely do some more positive things around that. I think it would also be good to maybe do some little videos just to kind of bring that to life. So yeah, again, if any volunteers would like to help with that, that would be brilliant. But yes, we will be kind of raising awareness of that in a positive way. And I think the other thing we need to do, one of the key things of the highway code is that it's a hierarchy of responsibility, and I think as a responsible organisation we do also need to point out the ways that, you know, cyclists should give priority to pedestrians on shared use paths and side roads and things, so we will be raising awareness of that as well.
We've had a comment about mythic beasts on our supporters page. I just want to say there's a few sports supporters we didn't thank. A huge thank you to Zedify, Outspoken Training, Outspoken Cycles for their ongoing support. Mythic Beasts have supported us for a long time, and we're working on getting them on that page as well. And I'd just like to say there's a lot of great opportunities for sponsorship from corporate sponsors this year. Hopefully the Reach Ride is back up. There is space for a local organisation to be our Reach Ride sponsor, for example. So please help us get the word out there. So
I just want to say one more thing before we move to the formal voting of the things. There is a policy that we have now, the donation policy, that explicitly says what somebody expects or what we expect when somebody makes a donation. So I encourage anybody who would like to make a donation or would like their company to make a donation to look through that policy and make sure that they're happy with that. The corollary of that is that we will not accept donations from just anybody. So if, for example, we got a donation from an organization that we would not be happy getting a donation from, whether that's because they are a company that just promotes oil burning cars or something else, then the trustees do have the right to reject donations in that respect. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody's very clear that we have that policy and we will use it if necessary. So I think, given the time, I think we move to approval of the 2021 accounts. So again, we'll do that by a show of hands in Zoom. Down at the bottom of the screen, there's a raise hand button. So please click that and we will see if we get a good majority of people. And I think that's well over half, going 3/4 at this point. So I think the accounts have been formally approved. So thank you, everybody. And we will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is Camcycle 2022.
I won't go into this too much. This is the Camcycle's vision. We've had this for a while now, and I hope everybody has seen it. That in case you haven't heard, we work for more, better and safer cycling for all ages and abilities in and around Cambridge. And we really do mean around Cambridge, the Cambridge region, and that will be happening more and more over the coming years. And that means a thriving, sustainable region, places where anyone can start or continue to cycle, and happy, healthy people. So that's our vision. And we've put some more work into our strategy. So just before the pandemic, we had a strategy day where we really workshopped some of the big questions facing Camcycle and where we go next. And our work to develop the strategy got slightly interrupted as we went into crisis mode to deal with the pandemic. But we are emerging from that now and looking at what are the plans for Camcycle in the coming years. And there's 4 main objectives for us. The first one is that we grow our influence at the regional level where transport decisions are made. And this is really important. When Camcycle started, even when I joined Camcycle, decisions were really made for Cambridge at the city or the county level. But now we have the Greater Cambridgeshire Partnership and the Combined Authority, and these decisions are being made at a regional level by councillors who maybe don't spend that much time in Cambridge. So it's been really important that we show our context for Cambridge and for the region within the Greater Cambridgeshire area. And also it's important that we're not seen as the city versus the region. We're actually working together. So it's really important now that we're campaigning as a region, not just as Cambridge City. And this will be becoming clearer and clearer, especially when we have the extra help of our infrastructure campaigner. And you can already see the more we talk about the region, the more we're working more regionally, it is having an impact in how councillors view us and what we stand for. So we're seeing the impact, it's only going to get better. So some of the key things our members have told us through our member survey that we do things like responding to planning applications, consultations, and helping our members and supporters to do so. So we'll keep doing that, but we need to do it on a larger scale. Meeting with decision makers and encouraging members and supporters to do so. Again, we do that, but we're reaching further and further out. We have MPs beyond Cambridge who want to meet with us. We've got councillors from places like St Neots, Huntingdon, who want to talk to us and get our views. So we're really reaching further out and making sure we continue to ask these questions at local authority meetings. Even if they are hours away in Alconbury, we still find a way to make sure that Camcycle's presence is known. So that's our first objective is really campaigning on that regional level and setting that context. The second objective is creating agenda setting campaigns that get others involved and make change happen. And you can really see how we've picked up the pace on that in the last year. 2 years, the Save Our Cycles campaign, the Spaces to Breathe campaign, and now we're really growing Zero Carbon Streets campaign. This is about coming out ahead of proposals and saying, this is what we expect. This is what should be happening in Cambridge. This is what we think needs to happen with traffic. This is what we think needs to happen for our cycling network. Rather than being reactive to what's given to us, let's try and shape those proposals before our decision makers are even thinking about them. And let's really get people inspired to have their voices heard. The political climate means it's really important that local people are telling the candidates that they might vote for what it is that they expect in terms of cycling and walking. And also more important than ever, as we see climate change really, really becoming part of our daily thoughts, our daily expectations. We can see over the last few years, it was almost sometimes we were a bit worried about making environmental points. It had to be practical and good for the economy, but now actually we really can come out a lot stronger about the importance of active travel and reducing car journeys to help us with our big challenges that are coming with the climate. So the things that our members have told us are important to them, talking more about reducing car journeys. You just couldn't do that a decade ago. You really can now. This is a serious conversation, and we're seeing examples like France where they're becoming quite bold here. We need to follow. Developing our own detailed plans for a joined up cycle network. We know that there are plans that should be coming from the county. We're seeing things, but let's make sure that we're ahead and we know what we're asking for, and also really pushing those messages about climate change. So, and you could see, you know, our COP26 ride, over 100 people came along on that. People are ready for these kinds of calls to action. Our other objective is reaching out to local communities and sharing the joy of cycling for all. And that's probably been the hardest thing to do over the last year. And I really hope we can pick it up more in the coming years with our events once we can get back out there again. And it can sometimes be really hard. Campaigning takes up so much of our time that we don't put enough time into making sure we're reaching out into the community and understanding what everybody's views are about cycling, and encouraging everybody to cycle, because you know, as much as we have great rates of cycling in Cambridge, we're still not reaching out to everybody, and we need to do more there. So hopefully we'll see the Reach ride coming back. We'll have more social rides. We will see how things go for the Festival of Cycling and what scale we do that on this year. But the priorities our members are telling us are about working with more partners, because there are so many people doing great work in Cambridge. Camcycle doesn't have to do everything, but how can we elevate the work that is being done? Taking our stall bike to more local events and festivals. So we'd love to see more people volunteering to help us attend these events. They're really great. And I could say how wonderful the stall bike at the Stourbridge Fair was, and all the great conversations we had about the Chisholm Trail and how many new members we signed up. So they can be really rewarding. And of course, let's get back to hosting our events like the Reach Ride. We really can't wait. And then there's the things that go underneath all of that. That is the Objective 4, which is nurturing our sustainable organisation to enable our campaigning successes. And it's the stuff that people don't necessarily see going on behind the scenes, but we need to make sure that we're operating in a responsible way. Are we financially sustainable? Are we operating in an ethical and moral way with the work that we do? Are we looking after our staff? Do we have the computers and the systems that we need? Do we have enough money to make sure we can keep doing what we plan to do? And are we taking good care of risk management, making sure that we know what's going on and we're prepared for any eventuality? So it's something maybe members don't necessarily have priorities about that. It happens a bit behind the scenes, but the more we grow, the more influence we have, the more we have to make sure that our foundation, holding the organisation up, is really strong, and that work continues. Peter mentioned how we're starting to work with an external bookkeeping firm. These kinds of things are important as we grow. Some of the pressure, the workload can be too much for volunteers. And if we don't have enough staff capacity, let's get things like a bookkeeping firm. We're getting a bit of extra HR support as well. So that's the foundation underneath the work that we do. And Robin touched on this as well. It's really important that we broaden our trustee recruitment. It's been a really tough year, and everyone's really felt it. And I think a huge thank you to our trustees who have really held on and been a great support over these challenging times. And we do have a few trustees standing down this year, and I think they've worked hard and it's time for a break. But that means we need to get some fresh energy into the organisation. We need to make sure we're getting diverse views. That's really important for things like representation, but also risk management, and just ensuring we're covering all our bases as an organisation. We need different ways of thinking. So if that's something you might be interested in, come and have a chat. We can ease you in. Don't feel any pressure, but do come and have a conversation with us. So that is a very quick run through of our priorities for the coming year, and most of that sits around this amazing opportunity to hire our infrastructure campaigner. And hopefully we're not putting too much pressure on them before they've even started, but that will see a real sort of shift in how Camcycle operates in the coming years.
Well, whilst we're waiting for questions to pop up, just a reminder that there is an election for trustees. So the trustees are elected every year. We're using the same voting policy that we've used in the past. So that's a single transferable vote. And if you've registered for the event, which you probably will have since you've got the Zoom link, you should have also received an email from OpenVote. And you can just click on that link, and that will take you through to the voting sheet, and you just click on a few things, vote for whoever you want, or don't vote for whoever you want, and then click the link at the bottom. And just a reminder that the voting will close at the end of the meeting, which we're currently scheduling for 5 p.m. So now would be a great time to ask a question, but if you haven't got a question, go find that Open Vote email and click on that and go vote. Oh, got a question. What time commitment is involved in being a trustee? Is it suitable for everybody? So at a minimum, we have a meeting once every 2 months. That is an evening. So logically, it should be about 2 hours. Sometimes it runs a little bit long. And obviously you need to prepare for that meeting. So read the meeting agenda, any papers that come forward. So, depending on how much work you're currently signed up for, that might be 1 or 2 additional evenings just to prepare. And the question of, is it suitable for everybody? Yes, it is suitable for everybody. And I think the only restriction we have at the moment is that you have to be an adult. So I think the Constitution says you have to be 18 or above to be a trustee. But if you are 19 years old and you haven't got any clue about what a trustee is, then just talk to us and see if it would be interesting. It's a great way of getting to see how organizations run, what the concerns that an organization has. We don't talk much about campaigning in the trustee meeting. We are concerned about cash flow and strategy and stuff like that. So if that is an area that interests you, or you'd just like to learn a little bit more, then please go talk to us.
Speaking as the accountant, strategy and cash flow can be exciting, but we also have a relaxed atmosphere and are looking for people who can contribute a different range of views, even if it's local knowledge and knowledge of a particular community that can feed in. And things like strategy and cash flow sound frightening, but speaking as somebody who started his accounting career working with nurseries and organizations like that, underpinning it, the key thing is that what the approach is logical and sensible. It sounds like a posh thing, but actually, strategy and cash flow sound posh and perhaps can be a bit off-putting, but underpinning it all is a common sense approach. And lots of big brains that think they know it all have tripped over their bootlaces by overcomplicating it and overlooking the sensible.
So I think that we should therefore adjourn about 5 minutes early. After the break, Adam Tranter will be here to talk to us. That starts at 15:45, at 3:45 sharp. So please go grab a cup of tea. Anything else you need, we will go from there. Oh, just got a question come in. What platforms or other online mechanisms are available for members to hear and contribute to discussions? So the answer to that one is that we have something called Cyclescape. So if you're a member, then you should have information of how to join to Cyclescape. That's pretty much where all of the discussions on issues are done. So if, for example, we're discussing something on Histon Road, then there will be a discussion just for that. So if you're not interested in anything that happens in Wisbech, then you don't have to follow those discussions if all you care about are something on Histon Road or Union Lane or something like that. So if you don't know how to do that, send an email to contact and we will get back to you.
Okay, welcome back everybody. Welcome back to Camcycle's AGM Part 2. And here is the treat for you all. You've got through the official business, and now it's time for us to enjoy the insights and inspiration from our guest speaker, Adam Tranter. And we've just been talking about the news today of Active Travel England, and we know of Chris Boardman, and now we're all learning about Adam Tranter, who is another cycling czar, but this time in Coventry. Adam, I'm not going to do too much of an introduction, just a few key points. Adam is the newly appointed Cycling and Walking Commissioner for the West Midlands. He is also co-host of the Streets Ahead podcast, which I know many of us listen to. And this is all, he's excellent at all of this because he is also the CEO of communications agency Fusion Media. And I imagine lots of us read some of the publications that come from that. And if you weren't aware of all of those, you're probably aware of the Bike is Best campaign that's launched over the last 2 years. And the Bike is Best campaign brings together the cycling industry, cycling advocacy organizations, and local authorities to promote cycling. Adam is the person who finally managed to do it and create one of those fantastic cycling promotional campaigns that I think we've needed for a really long time. So Adam is here to share your wisdom from so many paths in your life. And the title today is Zero Carbon Streets, from the Personal to the Political. And we hope this inspires you for the coming year with our Zero Carbon Streets campaigning. Adam, I'm sure I've barely even touched the surface, but I'm going to hand over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Roxanne, and thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to talk you through some of my active travel journey so far, and some of my learnings and experiences, and well aware actually that I'm pretty new to all of this, so I'm still massively learning, and I guess bringing some new thinking in many cases, but really thankful and supportive for certainly in my area, but around the country, because of the nature of what we want to achieve, all the hard work that goes from campaigners and advocates like yourselves, and like myself as well. I know it's not very, it's sometimes not sometimes very rewarding, but often not that rewarding, with the ups and downs of active travel, but it feels like we have the potential to finally make some real progress up and down the country. I should say as well that when I first started getting involved in campaigning and kind of sitting on webinars like this and kind of listening and learning across the active travel spectrum, Camcycle was an organization that again and again was on my radar. So I think it is really great to have such a professional setup of campaigners and background administration that means that you guys can respond to the latest consultations in a really informed way, and also just really top quality campaigning. So it's not always like that, as I'm sure you know. So you guys should be really pleased with what you've been able to achieve, and I think that the whole country should look to this sort of model to try and build on this. So I'm going to do a well, it is a presentation. It's not a big presentation. It's just really to help you with talking points, and then I'd be very happy to answer questions at the end. I should say that I've been Cycling and Walking Commissioner in the West Midlands for probably about 6 weeks, maybe 6.5 weeks. So I'm very much well, two sides of that. I'm very clear on what we need to do, and I've got quite a clear view on how we improve things. But I'm not going to present you with a 1,800-mile B network style plan here and say that that's what I've done in the last 6 weeks, because it is not. But I'm very happy to talk about what I found so far and what my hopes are for the future. So I'm just going to share this presentation, which is there. Can you see that? Great, cool. All right, great. So just a little bit about me, just to build on the intro from Roxanne. I'm a lifelong cyclist, which you shouldn't need to be to want to just cycle to the shops in this country, but it has led to me being very passionate and very interested in cycling, especially. I grew up racing bikes, going around the country and racing. And growing up, I wanted to be a professional cyclist, which was my dream and ambition, thwarted only by the fact that I kept finishing about 37th in races, so I wasn't able to, meet my dreams, as it were. So I ended up leaving school with kind of no demonstrable skills really, other than knowing a lot about cycling, which was to start with seemed pretty silly, but soon after we were fortunate that things like the Beijing Olympics and the Tour de France coming to London in 2007 and 2008 led to all of a sudden people being quite interested in this cycling thing, primarily from a sporting point of view. So I managed to earn some money by writing about cycling and Cycling Weekly and things like that. But also that led to me setting up a marketing agency called Fusion Media, which was set up in 2008, and for the first couple of years it was sort of just me sat in my bedroom. But we've over the last however many years, 14 years now, grown. We're still a small company. There's about 14 of us in total, and we spent the first part of the kind of half of the company's life doing the same things we do now, but sort of talking about we want to get more people on bikes. But the more people on bikes thing was very much, and this is sort of systemic of the cycling industry in this country, was just to get more middle-aged men like cycling at weekends, and that's great. And like in many cases, all forms of participation is great, but it's really been an identity of what cycling is in this country, and we thought cycling was just a sport or just something people did recreationally. So then subconsciously as a culture we don't value it, we don't understand it, but we were doing good work. We're trying to get more people on bikes, and I'm really proud of the stuff that we did, working with a lot of premium kind of road cycling brands, many of which we still represent now. So we still do the kind of core cycling thing. But kind of stuff happened 4 or 5 years ago that in work times, and previous to that, I had twin boys about 7, nearly 8 years ago now. And my sort of perspective changed. Combined with the work stuff, I started working with brands like Brompton, managing their PR and communications here in the UK, and very much started to see the bigger picture and started to understand that this was more still about getting people on bikes, but this could be about changing cities or changing people's life outcomes, and all of those great things that we know that active travel can do. So we've really focused on taking cycling to the mainstream. So now we're doing working with brands like Specialized and Rally and Shimano on e-bikes, for example, with we know that can open up cycling to many more people. Also working with Brompton on effectively, campaigning, doing good as a company, and they launched a manifesto for movement, which is how they want to change cities and engaging with government to try and do that. So we're still getting more people on bikes ultimately, but the kind of people that we're getting on bikes, we believe, and the cycling industry believes, for a cycling revolution, we need to make it normal. We need to make it feel safe. All of the things that as an advocate we're fighting for. So there's a lot of synergies there. Just quickly as well, when the first lockdown happened, I just had a sort of overwhelming sense that I needed to do something, and we set up the Bike is Best campaign. Ultimately, it went through various iterations of ideas and names, but ultimately what was launched was accumulation of about 15 days of solid work without kind of but I did sleep, but you know, without doing anything else really than that. So we were able to assemble around 40 partners in the cycling industry to help fund that and launch this kind of minimal viable product of you know, this campaign that really had to go out quickly because it had to hit the moment, you know, where a lot of people were cycling, the sun was out, people didn't, you know, like the idea that there would be people driving in their communities and things like that. So we set that up, and that's since progressed to being funded in 2021 by around 50 partners. And we're up again in 2022, planning just now for how we continue to market cycling to mainstream audiences, make it normal, sell the benefits, and also make it feel like an inherently normal and sensible thing to do. So that when our local leaders and politicians want to implement this infrastructure, that, you know, we make it clear that this stuff is normal, it's popular, and it's, yeah, as I say, inherently the right thing to do. I have volunteered, I should say, in the past in cycling advocacy, and was, when I was first asked to do this, I was the bicycle mayor for Coventry, which is a voluntary position. I'll explain what that means. But since the time passed of being asked and to being here, I'm now working formally as a cycling walking commissioner for the West Midlands, appointed by the Conservative Mayor Andy Street. That was well, I was appointed by him. I should say I went through a formal recruitment process and had to do many job interviews and things like that, which was all very new to me because I've only done my own thing. So on the right is just little photos of me riding my bike when I was little, and my top right is my kids in the back on the Coventry Ring Road that was closed off for one of the HSBC rides, and evidence on the bottom with Andy Street that I just joke that I can't be seen as being anti-car if I'm dressed as a quick fit fitter. So my blue outfit managed to fool people. What's a bicycle mare? Well, they take their inspiration from nightmares, which need a better name in English, and they were the first, kind of first appeared in Amsterdam to look after the nighttime economy in Amsterdam, and they were volunteers that worked on behalf of their community and funded actually by local businesses, etc. And the representatives that I worked with from a social enterprise called BYCS or Bikes saw that and thought, oh, that's good, and decided to create the Bicycle Mare Network. There are about well, there are over 100 bicycle mares worldwide. Very importantly, they're independent of government and politically neutral. But it effectively gave a platform to support positive change and also, you know, effectively hold some power to account, or at least get in the conversation of what's happening in active travel. So, you know, I think it's a new and innovative form of local advocacy. I think it can, you know, can work really well, and I thoroughly enjoyed the what was it, year and 3 quarters that I did. When I was working as bicycle mayor, there's a lot of similarities actually between this and what I do now. Actually, it's more the structure has changed, and some of the levers of getting what we need to enable active travel have changed. But effectively, I was volunteering and my deal with the council was, I'll support you when you're bold. And I'll take the flak if you want me to. You know, I'll stand out there and back the cycle lanes and back the, you know, and bring the community alongside with me. But I'll hold you to account also when it doesn't go well. So, you know, I think generally no one goes into politics as a local councillor. You know, you don't do it for the money, certainly. So generally you go in because you want to make positive change, and people generally just shout at councillors or write emails about bin collections and things like that, and it's not massively you know, rewarding, and no one really says thank you actually. So just by creating this level of kind of buoyancy, I guess, of hey, that's really made a difference, you know, thank you, and enabling, kind of mobilizing the community to do that, really meant that the level of ambition and quality increased because they felt good doing it effectively. I always try and sell the benefits via communication. It's kind of inherent in my nature because of what I've done for a living. But I also realised very quickly that this wasn't about cycling or even active travel per se. This was, there were so many local interest groups of people who, with the right information, would actually be on board and support the same thing. So that was really positive. I learned that we need to get early data on local issues before schemes are drawn up, working out what the problems that we need to solve, rather than just presenting, hey, we've got cycle lanes, this is what you guys need, kind of going into community and going, well, only a third of you own a car, and most people are rat running through your community and parking on the pavements. This is a tactic to help resolve that. And working with advocates like yourselves, I was able to develop a relationship, and I'm sure it might be similar in your relationships as well, but where we can now get involved from the start and help co-design schemes and also advise on schemes before they go out to kind of consultation as well. Just very quickly on my new role, what's the Cycling and Walking Commissioner? I guess it can vary from place to place and mean different things to different people. It's typically a role to support either elected mayor. They're very popular in mayoral combined authorities. So I represent the West Midlands mayoral combined authority. But obviously the first real cycling commissioner was probably Andrew Gilligan in London, and that position now held by Will Norman. You'll know of Dame Sarah Story, of Simon O'Brien in Liverpool, recently of Chris Boardman until Greater Manchester until today. Effectively, we're taking on a more national role as a commissioner, and there for me again another fresh approach to making change, but from the inside, effectively. And I'm here to provide support, share a vision to the public, but most importantly, help councils deliver active travel quickly and to a high quality. We have a huge opportunity, but also an issue where we are in that a lot of the 7 different local authorities that make up the West Midlands Combined Authority have very different approaches and have very different track records, just being open about it. And we need to bring that level up, and we also need to do it quickly because for a variety of reasons, because of funding, because I've got a 3-year contract in line with the mayor's current term, and I want to get as much stuff done as possible, and for all the very obvious reasons of climate change and air quality and our health, and the fact that this is just inherently the right thing to do. The real power lever, I guess, is something that Chris Boardman told me when I asked for advice, and he'd been told by Andrew Gilligan the same thing. So this kind of keeps getting passed down as advice, and it goes, you have to be speaking for the boss, and you've got to have access to the cash, and those two things are really, really important. And I'm pleased to say that during the process and working with the mayor, to get on board, it's clear that I have his full support, and the ambition is shared. And really, you've got to speak for the boss. Andy Street's got a very strong mandate. We have good relationships with our local authorities, and Andy, I think, is a very impressive leader that works with all colours of politician and parties, and it's that's a really positive thing. And then access to the cash, because of the way that funding generally happens now. Most funding for transport is filtered through the West Midlands Combined Authority or associated mayoral combined authorities, etc. So being able to reward local authorities who are ambitious with more cash, and only provide funding for the very best schemes is a really good way to get stuff done very quickly, and that's the importance of that line there, and why the advice is so helpful. At the moment, I'm here to listen and learn, and then move into a kind of check and challenge mode. I'm here to be like, why do we do this like this, and other things like that. So it's very it's a kind of disruptive role in many senses, but all I'm interested in is getting as much change, positive change for active travel as quickly as possible. Really important, I'm a conduit between the mayor and the combined authority with the local authority leaders, central government, various different departments in the Department for Transport, and now Active Travel England as well. So this is stuff that's happening in Coventry, was happening back end of last year in my sort of tenure as bicycle mayor that I helped on. All the credit really goes to a brilliant designer, Pete Howarth, who is responsible for the blue routes in Birmingham and now this route in Coventry, and is designing the Binley Cycleway, which is one of my funded routes in Coventry as well. Pete's a brilliant designer, and this is a really high quality piece of infrastructure with Dutch entrance curves, etc., and is really sort of putting us on the map. Where we're currently, in my role now as commissioner, one of the first things I had to do was get stuck in what's called the City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement, or CRUSTS, as people like to use for the acronym. And effectively, the government are giving us over £1 billion to fund transport over the next 5 years, and that is primarily focused on bus and bike. Really, so there was a real opportunity for us to set the tone for the next 5 years and get on with getting stuff in the ground and getting stuff designed for those years 3, 4, and 5 as well. And the government direction is very clear. It's got to be good, and it's got to be active travel, or it's got to be bus, basically. And then that's really the push that's coming from the current the current government, current Prime Minister. And it's really welcome, actually. So on the right, this is the Binley Cycleway that's currently spade is in the ground just this month, actually, and again going to be really lovely and high quality, and connect the city centre with the university hospital, but also with some of the region's major industrial employment areas to the east of Coventry. So I just wanted to, I'll run through this pretty quickly, but I wanted to just provide a little bit of, I'm still a campaigner effectively. I've just got slightly different levers to pull now. So I wanted to give some of my thoughts on campaigning and messaging, and some of this, I think you guys will know much of this, but just some observations ultimately that may or may not be helpful. So I found when I first started doing this is that I couldn't work out who mattered effectively, and I spent probably most of my time in the right hand side of this thing in strongly agree, where we're all like, hey, yeah, this is great, why don't you get it? And most of my time looking at what people on the left of this diagram were doing and thinking, which generally led to inertia in the fact that sort of, you get sucked into this microcosm of niche politics and interest. And actually I worked out, thankfully, fairly quickly, that really all that matters and all who matters at this middle group here. Those who have spent a lot of time on the internet will know that the guy on the left is a meme. His name is Hide the Pain Harold, and I've selected him because to me he looks like a local councillor who has just been told his region has been given some money for active travel. He's on the face of it happy about it, but also petrified that they might have to reallocate some road space, or that he might get some angry emails. And providing support to those people is really, really important, and selling the benefits to people who are in that position is really, really important. More important than that is the lady on the right and people like her who maybe during lockdown thought, this is nice, I could cycle more. There's, when I'm not near cars or when there's segregated infrastructure, I can do this. And we should remember that the majority of people, when we ask on nationally representative opinion polls, support this stuff. You know, the Bike is Best stuff, we did show that for every one person against measures to enable cycling in their community, there were 6.5 in favour. In politics terms, you know, it would be a landslide if you said, would you like 77% of the vote or whatever. So we really should remember that these are the people that matter, and this and that it's popular ultimately. Also, I found as a campaigner, and still now, I get, you know, I have good days and bad days, and the bad days, you know, come from sometimes thinking that you know, it's you that's got it wrong, and, you know, it's not quite, you know, what you're pushing for. People just looking at you like you're slightly strange, and when you hear, you know, the kind of sometimes quite abusive stuff online about why we shouldn't be doing this and who it will affect if we do it negatively, can be you know, dispiriting, to put it mildly. So I always like to also remember, this is sort of like a campaigner's sort of pep talk, if you like, that nothing worthwhile is ever easy, and I just picked up some of my 5 favourite examples that I like to present. So on the top left were represent sewers. So we should have had sewers. There'll be some very clever people on this call who tell me exactly how sooner we should have had them, but I think it's between 100 150 years we should have had a working sewer system in London, and we didn't, because of lobbying, effectively. There were people called Knights Soilmen who were paid to take out your waste, and they fought this super hard and made all sorts of conspiracy theories about why we shouldn't have sewer systems, because it would affect them, a very small group of people. It would affect, and lots of people died from a public health emergency, and there were some kind of worrying similarities to where we are with air quality and things like that just now. When we said we were going to ban smoking in pubs, it was by no means, you know, unanimously supported policy. And think now, like, would you ever go into a pub that if smoking was permitted, and would you ever find somebody who thinks that it should be? Elections in my local area were won and lost on the frequency of collection of wheelie bins and the implementation of wheelie bins. So we should also remember that just things like changing the style of bins that you collect from can lose an election, and people will go mad for it. On the bottom middle one is bus lanes in London. So older than me, but, you know, looking at the 70s, where bus lanes were started to be implemented and then taken out again, and then we had nothing happen with bus lanes for quite some time, and then lots of bus lanes were installed. You know, you cannot hold down good policy ultimately, and the same with the congestion charge. This stuff is not political, it's not party political. We should consider that these bold decisions are inherently the right thing to do, and there will always be people who are detractors, but you know, we elect politicians for their bold vision, and so often you need that to be followed through. I just had to remember that bike lash is not new, so, you know, it will always be here. So whenever there is an article in the local newspaper, or as there is, you know, a petition or a Facebook campaign, is just putting that into perspective and making sure that the positive noise outweighs the negative noise, and that's why that sort of representative opinion polling, which the government are in big favour of, Andrew Gilligan's in big favour of, can be really helpful. So, you know, we saw that Jeanette Sadiq Khan, who I'm a big fan of, you should read her book Street Fight. You know, she described it as without being dramatic, you know, as a fight. Like every day was a fight to give more people choices for getting around. And the other thing that she said, or someone else said before her, and she said as well to the mayor, which I've learned is you know, in God we trust, everybody else bring data. And that was really important for me to learn, that very early on, getting the data in and getting the positive arguments in is really important to show that this stuff works. Because if you leave it to conjecture or culture wars, it becomes a lot more difficult than it needs to be, because we know that we have facts and data on our side for active travel, it is sensible policy. I'm obsessed with the media. I think that you know, because it's my day job as well. There's a lot of ridiculous stuff going on in you know, in the media, and it just really shows in some cases what we're up against. But you know, anyone who saw BBC Breakfast this morning, you know, would see Chris Boardman, Duncan Dollymore on there this morning talking about it to you know, the largest single watched you know, television news program on TV, and both of the people sat on the sofa, the presenters, both cycle. They'd make a deal about it, but they both cycle. They, you know, it was a really positive conversation, and they were really committed to improving safety for cyclists. You could tell. And you have to remember that the majority of people are, and all of this stuff is just a bit of a sideshow and a distraction. Same goes for this stuff. It's just a distraction from the hard and important work that we need to do. So I always look at it like this: like, what do we want to achieve? What will work best for the majority of the community in getting modal shift? You know, what are the goals of other groups that we can bring in to kind of counter this negative feeling? Is it clear? Because sometimes early on I was talking way too much about cycling when it wasn't actually about cycling, it was about communities. And therefore, yeah, does it benefit others and not just cyclists? And we know if we have more people cycling, then there'll be safer streets, there'll be less through traffic, more people will be able to go and support local businesses, children will be able to play outside. All of these things come as a byproduct of active travel. But sometimes if you go in there and talk about cycling, it can just switch people off. I also think this little chart I have, but really it's about having a vision, working out who the stakeholders are, then mapping the relationships with those, bearing in mind that people get elected, new people come in, people leave, councillors, officers rather, leave, but it's the engagement with those people across all these different people at the same time that can lead to change. And the other positive thing that I always have to remember is that there are very few. I did a presentation once called Working with the Unwilling and How to Persuade People, but really there are very few genuinely unwilling people. I've been doing the commission job for 6 weeks and I have not met anyone unwilling yet. I've met people that don't have the tools that they need. I've met people that aren't sure about how to do it. I've met people who are worried about getting it done, but I've not met anybody who thinks this is a bad idea yet. And I think there are very few genuinely unwilling people in the places where we, you know, need them. I think relationship mapping is really important because, as I say, people come in and out. So, you know, I'm always about finding common ground, trying to see beneath the surface. Politicians always have 100 fires to put out, and they're going to put out the 10. They're going to, you know, try and put out the 10 that are going to burn them first, ultimately. So it's about understanding what their motivations are, what their pressures are, the landscape of their local wards, all of those things. And it's rarely about cycling. You know, it's rarely about cycling. It's always about something bigger than that, or something more nuanced than that, that you need to identify and help them resolve. Who can help you get stuff done? Finding those officers who are really, really supportive. That's what I found really helpful in my area, and I'm sure it's the same in Cambridge. And also working out what happens if that person leaves, like how do you build the strength and depth and the policy in places. We're just launching a local transport plan, which will cement a lot of this vision in the, you know, for years to come, regardless of, you know, who is the next round of officers or if there's a new mayor or anything like that. Really, you've got to have a strategy for how this stuff can be done long term. There are a lot of people who just don't care, and they're not, you know, they're not wrong or right, or they're not anti-cycling or anything like that. It's just most people want to be left alone for 4 years, and then occasionally, if, you know, they'll go and vote and they'll do their civic duty, but could you leave them alone for the rest of the time, please? And they're not really that interested. But they do have local issues. They're not involved in the kind of politics and some of the culture war, but they very clearly, you know, would like a better community that didn't have so much speeding or antisocial behaviour or congestion or pollution. So engaging with them and rather than imposing, I think we got it wrong to an extent. I think there's some good stuff that went in, but in the first lockdowns when the government had their emergency active travel fund, we did not present the best vision of ourselves through red and white barriers and sort of My local town centre got barricaded by pavement extensions, which meant that people couldn't cross the road to go to the other side of the shops and things like that. So really, we need to show what good looks like, and I'll just talk quickly about that. But working to build that genuine community discussion, not asking for a referendum, not saying like, you know, do you think we should have cycle lanes or not? But talking to people and finding out what their problems are and having the opportunity to explain. But we have to have a general acceptance that there is an issue. Following the kind of middle ground is important. As I said, people know what good looks like. So this is one of my favourite analogies. I can't take credit for it. It was Brian Deegan who mentioned it to me, and he said that he went to Centre Parks, and you know, all these people pay a lot of money, myself included. I went to Centre Parks in February, which is all I could afford, but went to Centre Parks, and people pay a lot of money to go there, and it's effectively a low traffic neighbourhood. They're told to leave their cars outside. People who really need cars, if they've got a disability or you know, or delivery or something like that, they're permitted to go in. Everywhere's a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit. Access is retained, as I say, for disabled people and essential services and delivery. It's safe enough that you'd let your kids scoot and cycle there, no questions asked. It goes even further, because if you want to talk about like urbanism and stuff like that, it's like a 15-minute city. It's got all the amenities you need, like, you know, healthcare. It's got shops, it's got pubs, it's got everywhere, restaurants, you've got everywhere you want to go within a 15-minute walk. Really, it's got places to stop and sit, and it's a genuinely equitable transport system. Everyone's on the same level pegging, really, and people pay several £1,000s a week to go and do this. And then you know, you can go home and say, wow, we couldn't have that here, but you can. Obviously, you're not going to get the forest bit or the high ropes, but you will get a lot of these things with active travel and changes to our community. And people know what good looks like. People enjoy this stuff. They're just not thinking about it in active travel terms, and why would they? The other thing is, you know, I've got lots of mates who aren't into cycling at all, but they go to Amsterdam and they, you know, they love it. No one comes back and go, yeah, I had a really nice time in Amsterdam, but I just wish there were more sort of cars everywhere, because they know what good looks like when they see it. And I think sometimes we didn't deliver what good looks like in the early measures. And that's why we probably need to work even harder than is sensible or normal or pragmatic to show that this stuff is additive to communities. I think change is hard. So in some of the areas I'm looking at, like, how can we do this in a low risk way? And I think, you know, most of the places that have a cycling culture now started off with, well, let's one Sunday a year let people cycle everywhere and close the road. And then it became what one Sunday a month we could do this, and then one Sunday a week, and then what about every day? And that happens in, you know, in many places across the world. The bottom left is Bogota, where this is, you know, a more organized thing every week. But you know, top left started off with the Cycle Sundays in Amsterdam, and you know, getting people to A, see that they like it, B, help them understand and co-design what it looks like, and C, proving that the world won't implode or cave in if you close roads, and actually people will still be able to get about, and in many cases will be additive to their communities and commerce and their health and well-being. Little thing that I just mentioned, 6.5 to 1 against. One of the things I just think is super important is making it normal, talking about those national opinion polls. I love what you guys do, because it's always normal people, normal clothes, doing normal things, as Chris Baldwin was saying this morning. So important to making cycling seem aspirational and seem normal. We did some research that showed that most people were supportive of cycling, but when you ask them what they thought their family thought, and then their friends, and then the general public, they gradually decreased how popular they thought cycling was. Everyone was supportive of cycling pretty much, but they thought that other people wouldn't be. But all the people asked individually if they were, said that they were. So we have this thing where people don't think cycling is popular, and we need to show that it is, and supporting it is a normal thing to do. So finding these unwilling, you know, many unwilling people are willing in disguise. You just need to find out the rationale. If there are genuine and willing people in Cambridge, like I want to say flippantly, just don't engage with them. I'm aware in some places in this country, like in Worcester, you can't, the leader's not willing, and sort of you say, well, don't engage with the leader, and it's sort of like, well, you can't then ever get any cycling infrastructure where it is now. But focus the energy on blocking the blockers and supporting politicians who do see active travel as part of the future. I'm finding a really easy way to work with the willing is using the carrot, which is funding. There is considerable money. Some may say not enough money from government, but more than we've ever had for active travel. Local authorities need money. It's an incredibly good carrot. And the stick from a campaigner's point of view, the one that I use as bicycle mayor, is if there's not this opportunity, is not the carrot being taken, is the little stick, I guess, is the media scrutiny that comes from that, and that's could be often as a secret weapon with campaigners. Active travel just doesn't get on the agenda in council meetings and things like that. You have to put it on the agenda literally. But say to kind of finish off, focus on the willing, and there are enough of them, even if it doesn't always feel like there is. Thank you, and sorry that went on slightly longer than I wanted it to.
Thank you, Adam. That was quite good, actually. So we're into question time. So if our attendees would like to type their question in the chat, there's the Q&A or the normal chat or the Facebook chat, or you could tweet. We're taking questions in any way you want. Come and knock on my door and ask a question. Adam, thank you so much. And I'm going to sneak in with my first question. Because I'm really interested for our region. Our mayor has said he will recruit a cycling czar, or a walking and cycling commissioner for the region. So I know you've only been in the job a little while, but what do you think are the qualities that our mayor should be looking for his recruitment?
The important thing to say is having a commissioner, and I was cautious about this in the West Midlands, is having a commissioner will not solve all of your problems, and may not even be that useful unless there is the political will to back it up. And I know that the mayor of the combined authority, had a conversation with it was publicised at the time. I remember had a conversation with Chris Eaton-Harris, the then active travel minister, and had was persuaded, and I know there was some problems with future bids that weren't of high quality enough. And sometimes I can speak from previous experience that it's not always, not always just a lack of ambition that leads to poor bids. There are all sorts of reasons, just lack of knowledge and all sorts of things. So it is really positive as a step, but I would say that the biggest thing is ensuring that the elected mayor gives access to the cash and the full political backing of whoever the commissioner becomes. I think to be a commissioner, you've got to, I'm not saying that these are all my qualities, but the ones that I've observed over time, I think you need to be good and resourceful with building relationships, and you have to, the biggest takeaway that I learned from Chris Boardman was his little anecdote about when he was working at British Cycling. He used to go in there and say, we're going to change the bars, we're going to move the bars like this or whatever, because we're more aerodynamic. And then everyone thought, okay. And then when the riders were given the choice, because it was personal preference, most of them didn't change their bars and didn't follow the instructions. He then got them in the wind tunnel and engaged with them and talked them through the logic and allowed them to see the data and lift under the bonnet. And then everyone was bought in, and everyone used the equipment because they believed in it and they'd seen it for themselves, and they were brought along that journey with them. So I think being a good relationship builder and a good communicator is really important. I'm aware that I'm saying this as a man, and I hope it doesn't come across in an odd way, but I'd really like to see some more female cycling and walking commissioners as well. I obviously wanted to do this job, and I think for what it's worth, I'm the right person for this job, but I think having much more diversity in thinking can be so helpful, because what I've noticed with everyone I've worked with so far is when I go to photo calls, there's like 3 men or 4 men, and when I go and speak to transport planners, I've not met any female ones yet. So that would be a wish as well, I think.
Okay, we've got lots of questions coming through. So Wookie asks, how do we get to all of those unengaged people and have the conversations you recommended about their issues? They are quite difficult to reach. Should we concentrate on door-to-door interviews or sounding positive on the internet or something else? So how do we get that first conversation with them?
Yes, I mean, yeah, that's a big old question, and it won't be easy. So you know, I think it needs you know, it needs careful thought. I know the answer. I have a rough answer, but I know the answer of what not to do, and it's you know, it's effectively Twitter. And you know, anyone who knows me, and I know, you know, Roxanne and others from Twitter, you know, I think it's a great thing. Don't get me wrong. But we're not influencing people. You know, we're not changing hearts and minds there. We're getting support or finding news or whatever. So I think you know, it's not often the internet. There, you've got to bear in mind that the majority of people who absorb media aren't active in the comments section. You know, these things aren't normal things to do, really. But I do think influencing the media, of course, I'd say this, but is really, really important. Finding local journalists that that understand, you know, are sympathetic to cycling and active travel, and also finding the ones who aren't, taking them for rides, showing them what it's like. I think it's a great thing to do with councillors as well. I've taken several councillors to Waltham Forest, but also I think it's a good tactic if people don't want to engage to me, to go to their ward and say, well, let's cycle around and see if we can spot any problems. You know, and the spoiler will be is that it won't feel safe, and you know, there will be problems. So I think the media can be really helpful in using that opportunity and engaging with media in that way. I think the door-to-door stuff is really interesting. You know, I know it's a tactic used a lot in politics, but I think it can be a really good way to engage with people. And I've got a lot of respect for people who go and do it, because it takes time and it takes a certain skill set and whatever. But I know some people in you know, in some of the low traffic neighborhood areas in London, you know, all they were hearing is everyone hates this, and they decided to like go and knock on doors and say, what do you think? And it turns out that people didn't hate it. It was just some people hated it and said, oh, could you put this up in your shop or whatever. And really, as I say, majority of people don't care, and just explaining to them where you're coming from, you know, is great. The biggest thing I get is like, oh, people don't use the cycle lanes. And then I say, well, this cycle lane is rubbish for this reason. Someone did it the other day in a cycle lane near me. I said, well, I actually broke my arm on that cycle lane because my elbow, because it's not gritted and it stops abruptly and forces you into the traffic. And they were moaning that they see the cycle lane not being used all the time. So people don't have that understanding. They're not bad people. They're not wrong. They don't have the empathy, or they don't have the life experience to have gone through it. So I think engaging to people directly is always the best way, and trying to get to the middle ground of, you know, not the activists, not always the you know, residents associations, things like that are important, but really the middle ground of just normal folk who would like to be able to take their kids to school by bike, or to let them walk on their own.
Anna has a follow-up question, and Anna's here. So Anna, would you like to ask your follow-up?
Yeah, I'm sort of interested in the Bike is Best campaign, which I think you've done some brilliant work on that. And do you have any data on sort of like how it might have influenced people that didn't cycle before? Like, I know you've got people that sign up to pledge to start cycling more. What sort of data do you have?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one, because when I started Bike is Best, I thought that that's what I'd be measuring, and I thought we'd say, well, that's where all the pledge stuff comes from. And to an extent, it's sort of good, and there are lots of like very good behaviour change platforms and schemes out there that encourage people to kind of commit to stuff and do stuff. the problem actually was that the people who were so happy to pledge weren't the people we needed to target. So, you know, like my friends would pledge and say, "Oh, I pledged." I'm like, "Yeah, but you already ride a bike." Like, you know, or great, I'm happy, but you know, that's not the point. And then you realize most normal people just don't, you know, pledge to do stuff. You know, they might go, you know, millions of people go to parkrun every weekend, but if you ask people to click a button and say, "I pledge to go to parkrun every Saturday," you get 200, 300 people doing it out of a million, because most normal people just don't react like that. So what we've learned about is how do we monitor the opinion of cycling over time as well. So we do that through nationally representative opinion polls. But really importantly is we know that we need to change the culture of this country to provide the groundwork for all the good infrastructure to go in and stay in. So really it became, the target for us came way more about trying to reach mass audiences and get recognition for cycling as normal transport, you know, a normal thing to do. So we actually measure our success really on reach now, and typically, I think 2022 we're just analysing, but in an impressions wise, it's around 40 or 45 million impressions. We're very lucky to have an out-of-home advertising partner in Clear Channel who give us around £350,000 of free billboard advertising every year, and we've had some TV ads and things like that. So we have to trust that our message is right, and we take it to focus groups and take it to people who aren't cycling and say, would you know, point at the cyclist that you'd like to be, and it's always the person who's not got a helmet on a Dutch bike with a basket. Oh, that looks cool. I'd like to do that. So we build on that and measure it that way. Have to bear in mind that it's a very slow. So I've been on a massive learning curve. I thought, you know, this was about what we do for next year and stuff, but really this is about like decades on decades of change. So really trying to make cycling not a weird thing to do now is so that we can make it normal in 10 years time. And when cycle lanes are going in everywhere, people go, "Oh yeah, that's for people like me," rather than, "Oh yeah, that's for those Lycra guys." Yeah.
We have a question from Jamie from York Cycling Campaign. How hopeful are you for Active Travel England? Do you think it will really hold councils to account?
I am very hopeful, actually, for a couple of reasons, which I'll explain. They're sort of nuanced reasons, because it's not just having Active Travel England, you know, as an entity itself, where the government has lots of executive bodies which, you know, have limiting varying levels of function and probably success. The reason I'm hopeful is because I trust and respect Chris Boardman a lot to do the right thing. He's not only a very good communicator, which is very important, he's very good with people, and he's very good with politicians and just explaining them the benefits. And I know I sometimes read it this morning to say, keep saying he's an Olympic medalist, like that's irrelevant to what this job is. But actually, for a lot of people within government, it's a way to get into the door. So, "Oh, I met an Olympic medalist," kind of thing. And once he's there, he'll sell a very good argument, and you know, that's what you need to do with politicians. So I think that's really, really important. Politics aside, I don't do party politics, but you know, you'll be aware that we have a Prime Minister and therefore a transport advisor that is very, very positive on cycling. I think that some of the success does, you know, some of the pace that this operates at depends on a mixture of the political will and the statutory powers. So if you had a different Prime Minister, you know, the transport advisor would change. There is some serious considerations there of whether we would be going in the same direction on Active Travel. But the reason I am positive is that Active Travel England is being set up in a very clever way. So there'll be monitoring, there'll be statutory consultees on housing applications, anything over 150 houses. So all the stuff that slips through the net now, where they build a brand new housing estate that's a cul-de-sac that you have to drive to get to, should be picked up at that early stage, which I think is is really clever. And I can tell you already, I alluded to this in a tweet earlier, but I can tell you already that it's making a difference. They've been live for 1 day, and on their first day, they emailed us, the country, saying, you bid for these schemes recently, we want to see all the designs to check that you're going to fund them if they're great. And you can say that 6 weeks to local authorities and they get it, they know that's what great. But tell you what, it sure makes a difference having the government saying, we might not give you the money to do this. So very quickly that's happening. It needs to be well resourced. At the moment it's very few people really. There's going to be 100 in total. So I think it needs to be run well and operated well, but I think it's I think it could be really, really game changing with a bit of good luck, good fortune along the way. Yep,
we're feeling excited, and I guess related that's sort of the big picture, and then back to your local area. Bev firstly says thank you for Streets Ahead, the podcast. And would like to know more about the attitude of councillors in your area and how signed up they are to active travel. And I guess I would add to that, have you seen a shift since you were the bicycle mayor and now with your new role?
Yeah, so I guess what do I think? You ultimately need to sort of relationship map, as I was talking about earlier. So it's hard to describe. I know to ask a question, you've got to have a certain amount of generalization, but councillors, kind of plural, a very, very different and diverse group of people. So really, well, I say one thing you do need to consider is to be a councillor, you need to, you don't get paid very well. So you either need to have lots of money or be retired, which is, I think, is a problem with the system. But you have to treat people as individuals, and so often, there's a councillor in Coventry who I respect a lot and has been instrumental, genuinely instrumental in getting active travel on the map in Coventry, funding schemes, having petitions written to her saying you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't remove parking, and going, no, this is the right thing to do. I asked if she'd like to go for a bike ride. She's like, no, not interested, at all. And that's fine, but I had to understand, I was perplexed, and I wanted to understand, well, why are you doing all this stuff if you don't necessarily understand it in the way that I do, because that lived experience is really important to know how important safety is. And she tragically, her niece was killed by a speeding driver on a pedestrian crossing, and it links in so much with I see on the internet forums, they're installing average speed cameras around Coventry. We've got something like 10 different average speed roads now, and it comes from that deep-rooted and very tragic set of circumstances that led to that person's motivation to want to do something. And councillors always going to do it to do good and do change. So understanding it on an individual basis is really important. There are some councillors in the West Midlands, which is broader than Coventry now. I've got responsible for 7 different regions within. There's little boroughs, massive boroughs like Birmingham, all these big places within the West Midlands. And it differs. I had a call with Birmingham the other day. You'll know Birmingham has bold plans, and very quickly they were like, we are here to work with you, and we are so excited about this. Everything's happening super quickly, and they're really, really on board. There are, I've got to be honest, there are some local boroughs who have not quite seen the light yet. And you need to work with them, but on an individual basis. And it might be about finding out what their levers are. In certain areas it might be health inequalities, it might be jobs, it might be all of these things that are different levers. But that's why I think finding out people and talking to people who sometimes don't agree with you as well is important to understand. I would say overwhelmingly though, most cabinet members, who are the people who are really pulling the strings, are in transport or highways or climate change. They have roles for now. Get it. There is no ambiguity. Probably 5 or 10 years ago, they were going, well, actually, no, we can just do this and stuff. The understanding that active travel is something we need to do is almost uniformed across everyone I've met so far. It's about getting them to do it and the pace that we do it within the kind of public sector framework. That's the challenging and exciting bit.
Okay, well, then I'm going to do the last question because we are officially over time. And it's a summary question from Martin. Great talk, by the way, more than just quite good. How can we hear more from you in the future?
Be careful what you wish for, but you can subscribe to the Streets Ahead podcast, which me, Laura Laker from The Guardian, and Ned Bolting, who commentates on the Tour de France, amongst other things, really gets utility cycling talk about. So we just have a natter, try and do it once a month. So you can get that wherever you get your podcasts. I'm on Twitter at Adam Tranter. That's about it, really.
I'm sure we'll hear more from you as you really take off as the Commissioner of Walking and Cycling for the West Midlands. And hopefully we shall have one of our own in Cambridgeshire soon enough. And maybe we can get some of the commissioners together in Cambridge to actually have some in-person interaction. But I shall leave it there. Adam, thank you so much for joining us today. Really inspiring. I've got ideas and notes already swirling around so we can put them to work for our Zero Carbon Streets campaign this year. But huge thank you and all the best for your work this year as well.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks very much for having me. And I am coming to Cambridge soon, I hope. I've got it on my list of things I want to do, so I will be in touch. And
oh, yes.
Would love to.
We will give you the tour, that's for sure. You might regret it. We get excited, and there is a lot of infrastructure.
Yeah, well, there's so much to show you. Just behind me.
Yes.
That went in this year. That behind Anna went in this year. So when you come, give us a call, and we'll show you around.
Great, cool. If the cycle lanes could and filters and stuff could be near pubs, that would be good too.
Yeah,
yes, there are, I think, many pubs near filters.
Great.
Excellent. Well, this is where there would normally be a lovely round of applause. So we'll just have to pretend. But thank you so much, Adam, and we shall see you soon. Feel free to stick around for the rest of our AGM. There's only about 10 minutes to go, but you're allowed to
I have to take my kids swimming. I've used up all my Saturday points, so I'm going to go swimming now.
Well, thank you so much for sharing those points with us. Bye, Adam.
See you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for sticking with us, everyone. I know it's a lot of Zoom. We are nearly at the end. We just have the joyful business of the Camcycle Awards to go. There we go. Excellent. So there are so many people who contribute to the incredible work and impact that Camcycle has. We can't give an award to everybody every year as much as we'd like to, but here's a few of the things that we think of, a few of the people we think have been a real standout over the last year for an incredible year of campaigning. So the first award that we have this year is for our Partner of the Year. So the Partner of the Year award is for someone who maybe isn't necessarily a Camcycle member or volunteer, but they're doing amazing work that supports our aims, and we really appreciate what they're doing and do our best to support them. And I imagine just about everybody has heard of this person, Omar Terrywal, from the Stolen Bikes in Cambridge Facebook page. And just saying Facebook page doesn't really sum up the incredible work that Omar does and has done. He has fostered an incredible community of people from all walks of life in Cambridge, working together to tackle the issues of cycle crime, help each other with advice, share insights, and so on. And Omar has built such a large community and done an amazing job representing them that it has really, really put pressure on the police force, the council, even Camcycle to step up and do more about cycle theft. And not only that, but at least 200 bikes have been reunited with their owners through Omar's work. So thank you so much, Omar. A Camcycle award will be making its way to you, and we really appreciate the work that you've been doing to tackle the issue of cycle theft. Our next award, normally there'd be a nice round of applause and we'd hand it out, but anyway, we shall move on. Our next award is for the Public Officer of the Year, and of course, we couldn't not award this one to Patrick Joyce, who has worked so hard for so long to bring us the Chisholm Trail. So thank you, Patrick, for all the work that you've done. And I know that Patrick has gone above and beyond to make this happen. Beyond his day job, I think he's really been there. I see him regularly when I'm on the Chisholm Trail working. So he's really brought Jim Chisholm's vision, our vision to life with the Chisholm Trail, and we're overjoyed. So thank you, Patrick, for all of that work you have done. The next award is for the magazine photo of the year, and some of the things Adam was talking about communicating and helping people to see the vision and the kind of cycling they would like to do. Well, it's photos in our magazine that can really help bring this to life. And this year we have a wonderful picture from Jeremy Peters, who captured our Pedal on COP26 ride. And even Jeremy couldn't get everybody on the ride in the picture, but he certainly got a lot of us. And I think it did a wonderful job of capturing the scale of Camcycle and of this particular ride. So Jeremy, thank you so much for being there at the right place, the right time, and taking such a wonderful photo to support our campaigning. Following on from the photo of the year, we have the magazine article of the year. And our magazine is so influential. It goes out to our members, it lets them know what we're up to. It also goes out to decision makers. And I know that many councillors, developers, they read it and they learn from it, and it changes their perception of issues. It changes the action they take. It also helps our members understand how they too could take action. And our example for this article is brilliant representation of that. And we venture outside of Cambridge to Jamie Wood from York Cycling Campaign, who wrote a wonderful article sharing his experiences as a cyclist, as a campaigner, to help us work for more inclusive facilities in cycling. And Jamie, thank you so much, not just for writing this, but for the work you've done to really develop your approach to tackling barriers and then sharing that so that more of us can do it. And it's articles like yours, it's experiences like yours that have really helped us to tackle some of these problematic barriers that have been appearing even in Cambridge. So thank you, Jamie, for that article. And just goes to show Camcycle's work and influence, it does expand just beyond Cambridge. The next award is for the campaign of the year, and it's been great that actually a few times the campaign of the year hasn't really come from within Camcycle, and our campaign for the last year goes to Diane Fitzmaurice for her 20s Plenty campaigning in Cambridgeshire. And Diane has done such a brilliant job here to really push for these changes on our local streets in Cambridgeshire, from the parish council, from the county council. So Diane, even if Camcycle hasn't been able to do it all, we really appreciate the wonderful campaign that you have run for 20 is Plenty. Our next award is for the newcomer of the year, and maybe someone who's not completely new to Camcycle, but we've seen a new surge of interaction and energy, and really helpful insights as well, and that is from Margaret Winchcombe. So Margaret, thank you for your article writing, for your relationship building, for coming on our rides, helping present ideas at our traffic reduction meeting. And also you send us just some really helpful and insightful emails and advice as well. And we really appreciate it. So Margaret, thank you so much for the volunteering you've done, the contributions you've made to Camcycle. We really appreciate it. I really do appreciate the wonderful insights that you've shared with me in particular. So thank you, Margaret. Our next award is for Campaigner of the Year. And there's been so much going on locally in various areas over the last year, but a particular campaigner has really stood out, and that is Rosalind Lund. Rosalind, thank you so much for all the campaigning work you have done. You've really embraced Camcycle, our values, and just been such a wonderful practical contributor with your volunteering. You've helped us with leaflets. We know you've been speaking on the radio. You contribute to our traffic reduction meetings, and just been a really, really great example of how everybody can campaign in their area to make change happen. So Rosalind, thank you so much, and congratulations for being our Campaigner of the Year for Cambridge, because our next award is for the regional campaigner. And as we've mentioned with our Zero Carbon Streets campaign, we're trying to reach out more and more into the region. And so it's great to see the groups that have been doing this work. Although our next person, regional campaigner, has been working for quite some time on these issues, and that's John Powell from Ely Cycling Campaign. John, thank you so much for all the work that you've done for Ely, and your contributions that you've made to Camcycle as well. Wonderful advocate for cycling in East Cambridgeshire, but also a key organiser of the Ely branch of the Reach Ride as well, which hopefully is back on again this year. John, yeah, a wonderful example of regional campaigners, and we appreciate your work. Okay, whew, there's not too many to go. I'm running out of puff. Our next award goes to our Volunteer of the Year. And this is someone who's volunteered in all sorts of ways, a long-standing volunteer for Camcycle, and that is Wookie. So thank you so much, Wookie, for all the volunteering work that you've done over the last year, but also over many years with Camcycle. You've been a really fantastic and reliable ride marshal on some of our events recently, an excellent contributor to the traffic reduction subgroup. I'm just seeing some of the comments coming through. Yes, Wookie, really, you. You've attended council meetings. You've done a great job of reaching out to new communities on Facebook, and I do not know how you do it, but also on Nextdoor, just being calm and rational and putting some wonderful points across on social media. So calm, I can't imagine. And really pointing out how cycling is vital for tackling climate change. I know that's not all that you've done, Wookie, but yes, not Facebook. I know you're not on Facebook, but definitely on Nextdoor. Wookie, thank you so much. I do appreciate, we all appreciate the great campaigning that you have been doing and the volunteering. So thanks to Wookie. Okay, we're up to the last award, and it's a big one. And we've been sitting on this one for a few years because we knew we had to wait for the right year to make this award. And I'm sure that our Lifetime Achievement Award will be no surprise to anybody. It's Jim Chisholm. So we'll be I wish we were in person for this one. I would be stamping my feet on the ground. Jim is just the most brilliant example of a Lifetime Achievement Award for the amazing campaigning that you have done. We owe you so much for bringing us the Chisholm Trail. I can't believe every time I go down there, just the big smiles on people's faces. They are loving it. You have changed people's lives with this route, but that is not all that you have done, from your work to services for the motorist from way back when, and all the insights you bring, the DNA cycle path. Jim, we appreciate you so much and all the campaigning that you have done, and generations of people in Cambridge will be thanking you. So congratulations again. A huge thank you to everybody who has contributed to Camcycle's work this year to have such an amazing impact. I'm trying to talk and read all the comments whizzing by as well. But we can all catch up in the pub afterwards. That's it. We're only 2 minutes over. So a quick summary. I said thank you to all our members and volunteers who have contributed. I'd like to reiterate my thanks to the Camcycle trustees for their support and leadership in some really challenging times, and a huge thank you to the Camcycle staff team, Anna, Rosie, our interns that we've had over the year, Beth and Sarah. Yeah, it's been difficult and challenging times, and you've all been remarkable and incredible and passionate and dedicated. So thank you for all the great work that you have done. I think I'm going to call that done, unless the chair of Camcycle would like to say any final words. Robin, it's up to you to close.
I think we've had a fantastic AGM. I must thank the staff for the tireless work they've done in the background to make this happen. It's like a swan drifting along the top of the water. There's furious paddling underneath. And so thanks very much to Rosamund and Roxanne and Anna for making this such a fantastic event, and all the other people in the background that don't normally get recognised, like David and Sue, and I'm sure I'll miss other people, Peter, etc., etc. So thanks everybody. Hopefully I will see you physically in person this year on the Reach ride, and hopefully next year at the AGM in a building, hopefully. Thank you everybody, and good evening.